Okay, I don't know if any of you noticed, there's a little bit of an event this afternoon, about noon. I looked out my window, I was sitting in front of my computer, and I saw flakes coming down. Did anybody else see that? Oh my gosh. No, Ryan. No, don't go there, Ryan. This is not something we're clapping about right this minute, you know. I don't know if you happen to know, I'm not from these parts. That's right. I know it might be a shock. It might be a little bit of a surprise. I happen to be from parts of the country where it doesn't snow in October or November or December or January or February for that matter. I grew up in Central Texas, and all it does is ice, pretty much. The rain comes down, it freezes, and then nobody gets around for a couple of days. So this is new to me, relatively new. I'm still not used to it, even though I've lived up here for the last 3 years. Okay. Enough of that. Well, I'm a teacher over here across the street. I'm in the math department at Yale. And occasionally, I have the privilege of standing up and sharing with you guys. And I'm really excited about that tonight. But I must confess, the teacher in me does not go away when I stand in front of you and I have to bring props into the room. And you may have noticed here, there's a little bit of a prop over here. This is my daughter's bedroom door. It is. It is freshly painted. You see the pink, the purplicious, the pinkalicious, the sparkalicious. If you were to happen to go into the door, into her bedroom, you would see much the same colors in various forms in her room. There's a lot of things on here about her. There's Julia, her name, of course. There's a little heart. She's 7.5. There is the obligatory Frozen sticker right here. I'm not sure if Elsa or Anna is the one that's on here. I don't know which one's the most important, but it is a Frozen sticker. And then we have lots of things like passcodes. There was a time when you had to have a passcode to go into the room or not. Then there's a stop passcode necessary right here. And then there was some sort of, I don't know exactly criteria what it took to get in, to come in and to come out, but there was something going on there. But my favorite, this is my all-time favorite right up here at the top. No boys allowed in my room, except for Daddy. That's right, baby. And this, believe me, this will stay on the door for the next 20 years of her life. You better believe it. Yeah, whenever that first date comes over, we're going to come in front of the door, and we're going to have a moment together. And we're going to say, yes, and I am the bouncer, baby. Don't you forget that. So, all right, I forgot to turn on the slides here. We got some slides coming your way here. So what we're talking about today is not my daughter's door, but this idea of access into something. How do we access God as a matter of fact? So there's our title slide, and we're going to get at this by asking a question in the negative, actually. And this is it. You may have seen it on the weekly email. Is there someone, something, some experience that you don't have access to, but you would like to have access to? And so we're going to ask this question over and over, and we'll revisit it here at the end. But a little bit of context for our discussion today. We're actually in the middle of a series on who is Jesus. And we've got 5 qualities or 5 ways to think about Jesus that we're talking about during this series. The friend, the prophet, the priest, the judge, and the king. Now, I don't know if you attach the word access to any of those, but just in case you do not, we're talking about Jesus as priest. Now, and I don't know about you. I grew up in the South. I grew up in a very Protestant church, a very low church. This is totally cool. This is totally chill to wear jeans to church. And the preacher is very casual. I did not grow up in a more high church, formal church where there was a priest, right? But we had this idea of a priest that we're going to pay attention to today. And what does a priest do? A priest blesses, does certain things. Ultimately, the priest is a person, and it's almost always a man, the man who gives access to God or not. Right? So we're going to understand Jesus as the person who gives access to God. Now, I mentioned that we have this little question that we're going to deal with. And I actually want to deal with it now for a second. So you have a little card at your seat. It's either under your seat or on your seat or on the back of the seat in front of you. You have a little pencil, and I just want to take a couple of minutes. Whoa! Whoa! There we go. Thank you. Thank you, Gideon, in the back. A little mood music in the background. Sorry about that. Just take a couple of minutes. Take a couple of minutes. Come up with an answer. A thought or 2 or 3 on this particular thing. I'll give you a couple of minutes. What is something, someone, something, some experience you'd like to have access to, don't have access to, but like to? Is where we're headed. And by the way, the music, sorry I had to go here, is from the High Priest of Bebop. That's right, Thelonious Monk. There we go. Hey, my brother Julian over here is just loving life right now. But I did poll a few people this week, right? I am a member of the Twitter. And I thought, oh, I'll send something out on the Twitter and see what response I get. But then I realized I only have 6 followers on my Twitter account. So maybe I ought not to do that. So I decided then to go to the Facebook. I posted stuff on the Facebook. And 2 responses. And then I emailed a few people. I got several more. So I'm going to give you a sampling of the responses that I got to this question. All right. I would like access to the frequent flyer club at the airport. Yeah, this is something I personally don't have. This is from my brother-in-law, actually. He sent this one. Now, I don't know about you. I walk by those doors. I'm not the gold medallion. I'm not the silver medallion. I'm not the platinum medallion winner. I'm not any medallion winner at all, and I can't go in there. And I would love to go in and just kick up my feet, get some free Wi-Fi for a change, not pay $25 for a Coke. It would be awesome. So there we go. So access to a frequent flyer club at the airport is one of them. That's a friend of mine. Yeah, I like access to a child's mind. And my wife's. Yes, and I'm only partially joking. Oh, this is my brother John from Colorado sent me this one. I resonate with this one. What I love about this quote is the reason he gave it to me. He says, I really want to know, because I really want to know how my children think. I want to know how they feel. I want to know how they process things. I want to know how my wife, that big mystery that she is, I want to know how she thinks about things so that I can be a better father, a better husband. Yeah. Oh, boy. This is from my brother Julian over here. I want access to scriptures in Greek and Hebrew. Now, so I can better understand the context. Now, if you know a little bit about Julian, this is not just simply an intellectual exercise. It's not just simply I want to learn more so I can know more. He's seriously considering disrupting his life by a lot and going to school, understanding scriptures in Greek and Hebrew and many, many other things. So there's a little bit of an underlying disruption, I think. I'm taking a little bit of liberties here, Julian. Correct me if I'm wrong. There's a little bit of a sort of some tension underlying this desire, I think, to know scriptures in Hebrew. I'd like to access to physically care for refugee families in Europe. Some of these are very individual things that I would like to have. This one is more about other people and other people experiencing something that they don't currently have. This is from a woman I work with. I'd like to know more about the experience of being a college student when you're first in the family, in the minority relative to the campus population, or dealing with a learning disability. This person is passionate about helping all people from all backgrounds know and understand. And so in her, there's this tension simmering under the surface. I don't know what I would like to know. I'd like to help people learn better and more than they currently do behind some of this. Without a full-time job, I don't have access to vacation or good health benefits. And that's a big one for a lot of us, I think. There's a friend of mine who lives in a closed country, and by closed, he means the government is not friendly to his occupation. He's a follower of Jesus, and the government of the country he lives in is not particularly friendly to that. Millions around him do not have access to the message of Jesus, which is changing lives all over the world. So he lives and works in this country, and there's a bit of a tension here because he wants people to know Jesus, and his government the country he lives in does not. And those things butt head in various ways in his life. Person that wants to see his dad who's passed. His dad was in World War II, was a Navy veteran, served on the USS Enterprise, and he misses him. Right? So in all of these, I got many more responses. One of the underlying things that I sense in all of these is a little bit of a tension. There's some yearning for something that we do not have, right? There's a desire for things to be different either in my life or better in the world around me. Maybe we could say it like this. There's a sense of restlessness that we all have. And in fact, we were all of us, we were all restless people. Well, the good news is there's a chapter in the book of Hebrews, chapter 4 as a matter of fact, that addresses this very condition. If you want to head there, we're going to get there in a few minutes. Chapter 4 of Hebrews, we'll blast a few of the scriptures here up on the screen. But let me sort of set the stage for you a little bit. So I'm going to give you a little bit of history. We'll read a verse or two, and then we'll eventually get to this whole priest thing. So that's down the road several minutes from now. But in order to get there, we're going to have to understand this access, this restlessness thing. So the context of chapters 3 and 4 in Hebrews is this. The people that are here, the letter is being written to, it's actually a sermon. It's intended to be preached to these people. They live in Rome probably right just before Nero came into power. And if you know anything about Nero, he's pretty much a pretty bad dude here. And there's a little bit of tension simmering around the surface here. And so the author of Hebrews goes back 1,000 years or so. He says, hey, I want to tell you a little story about this wilderness generation. You remember your forefathers. They are the people of Israel. They were in Israel at one point in time. They chose to follow the God that was not the God or the gods of Israel. They eventually were enslaved for economic reasons, for political reasons, for religious reasons, for a whole host of reasons. And they said, God, I have some restlessness inside of me. I can't handle this. And God heard their cry and delivered them. And so you have the famous stories of the crossing of the Red Sea. They make it to the other side. They have found their rest from their restlessness, right? Not really, because God had promised them the land of Canaan. This is the place, this will be the land of rest for you. And so they set out to go to the land of Canaan, and it was a somewhat long journey, and they started getting a little bit frustrated. They started feeling a little bit tension. And yet the fact that they were following Yahweh, the one true God, wasn't quite enough. He had delivered them once, but they still had ways to go, and they started feeling this tension, this restlessness again. And then guess what? They got a little grumpy. And they started complaining, right? And then they made this series of bad decisions. And ultimately, they didn't find this place, this land of rest that God had promised them. Their children did, and their children's children did eventually, but they didn't quite make it into this land of rest. So the end of chapter 3 and chapter 4 of Hebrews talks about this thing. There was this promise, this place, this land of rest, but some people didn't make it for disobedience and for some other reasons. Now you fast forward several hundred years, and the author starts to speak into the lives of the Hebrews who happen to live in Rome. And you think about the people of these Hebrews that happen to live in Rome, a few important things. They were in the minority at the time. They had chosen to follow this Jesus, who they believed was Messiah. That was a different understanding of God than their Jewish forefathers had, as a matter of fact. And this started to cause a lot of problems. It caused some problems with the people in charge of the religious side of things, the Jewish folks. They didn't quite like this. And so guess what? Hey, I don't think it's time for you to have that job anymore. I think I'm going to give that job to somebody else. It's just too bad. It sucks for you that you follow Jesus right now. By the way, the government didn't quite like this either. The Romans didn't like this either. And so, it's kind of fun to see a few people get beat up. Let's just beat up a few Christians while we're at it. And so this is before the martyrdom kicked in, really kicked in. So there's this tension building, and there's this stress coming into the Hebrews' lives. And then the author of Hebrews writes these words here. For you, this is talking to the Hebrews, there remains a Sabbath rest for the people of God. There is this, yes, you are following Jesus, the Messiah, yes, but it's clear, number one, you aren't quite in this place of rest. It's something that's not yet to come, but in part already has come, but yet there's this tension right there. There's this restlessness. You aren't quite in the Sabbath rest. Therefore, let us make every effort to enter that rest so that no one will perish by following their example of disobedience. This is a reference back to the Israelites who didn't quite make it into the promised land. So a couple of things to point out right here. One is this phrase, Sabbath rest. It's sort of an interesting phrase. I don't know about you, when I think of Sabbath, that sounds kind of boring. That's the time when I'm not supposed to do anything, right? And I think about rest, I'm thinking, well, I don't know, that means go to bed. I don't like to go to bed. I live in the Northeast. I like to keep busy, probably busier than I should be. I like to watch the Cowboys on Sunday. Yeah, I don't know about you, but for me, I like to do things, right? And so this idea of Sabbath rest is not one that's particularly appealing to me, at least on the surface here. But I think there's more than what you see on the surface, of course, in this particular passage right here. And it's this idea of Sabbath. So you go back to Genesis chapter 1, and we have this description of creation, right? On day 1, God created. He stepped back and said it was good. Day 2, God created. He stepped back and said it was good. On day 3, he stepped back after he created and said it was good. And he go on all the way down day 6, and it was very good because I created man, and whoa, man, and wow, was she good. And then on day 7, God steps back and he rests. And Scripture never indicates that he has ceased from his rest on the Sabbath day, the seventh day. And so when this author talks about the Sabbath rest, it's a reference to the place that God is. In other words, the land of rest is not a physical place. It's not an emotional place where we feel good and comfortable inside. It's not an intellectual place where we understand more and more about God. It is, in fact, the very presence of God. And so this is the underlying tension here. We follow Jesus, we being the Hebrews, we being the people in this room, but yet there is this thing that is beyond us, this place of rest that maybe we have partially entered into, but not yet completely entered into. In other words, we are a restless people. And this is a challenge to enter in this land of rest. We go just a little bit further, and I actually don't have this passage up on the screen, but I'll just read this last part of verse 13 in chapter 4. Nothing in creation is hidden from God's sight. Everything is uncovered and laid bare before the eyes of him to whom we must give account. So on the one hand, we are a restless people. On the other hand, there is this land of rest. This happens to be the very presence of God, and somehow we are not yet there, so guess what we need? We need access to this God right here. Somehow we need the door to be opened, and maybe it's not. Okay? But oh, by the way, it's even worse than that. It's even worse than that. Everything is laid bare before God. Now, I don't know if you saw in the Times this week, New York Times this week, there's an article about uploading. Is it possible to upload your brain, digitize your brain and upload it to a computer? I don't know if you saw that. I actually had a slide with a cool visual on it. I deleted it, unfortunately. But I read that thing and I went, oh no, why would I want that, right? Why would I want that? Yes, if you happen to digitize my brain and somehow upload it into the cloud or someplace, guess what you would find there? Well, you would find the moments when I'm loving my wife, I'm taking care of my kids, I'm doing God-honoring things, yes. Oh, then you would find these moments when I treat my coworker poorly. You would find these moments when I lose my temper. You would find these moments when I think these God-awful things. And truly, there are God-awful things in my mind, these ridiculous thoughts in my mind. And if you were the person who were to come along later and have access to this uploaded, digitized version of my brain, guess what? It would be laid bare before whoever accessed it, and that would be bad news for me because you would see the complete pile of crap that happens to be in there sitting next to the God-honoring things that happens to be in my mind. And so we are restless people. There is this land of rest. In fact, it is not simply a place, it is a person. And we have this incredible barrier between us and this person. And so we need a priest to access this person who is God. So at this point, you need to know a little bit about priests, right? So I don't know much about priests in high church. I don't know much about that. I don't actually know a whole lot about Old Testament priests, but I can read and I can try to understand. And so I'm going to try to communicate to you just a little bit of how that works here. So let me clear things off of my little altar right here. This is my altar. So if you are in the Old Testament and you would like to access God, what you do is you come to the tabernacle and you walk in and you sit down or you stand up and the priest comes out to meet you. And the reason the priest comes out to meet you is because you can't actually go in to the altar. It's not allowed. I am the priest. I'm the mediator. I'm going to take care of you though, right? So Annie, I see you're here today. Thank you for coming. How can I help you access God? I see that you brought a beautiful, perfectly formed bird. Thank you so much. It is a bird of high quality. You can tell by the pink hair right here. Right? It's the best that Annie can bring. Thank you for bringing your best, Annie. I really appreciate that. So you want to experience some forgiveness? I understand. I take this. I go into the altar. Oh God, please consume completely this sin offering. Okay, Annie, you are forgiven. Go and live in peace. Okay. Leon, you're here. Thank you. You brought an oatmeal offering here, right? This is a grain offering. Okay, you're very gracious. You have a lot of gratitude for the fact that God has done something in your life. Great. Okay, thank you. It is the highest quality oatmeal, I might say. So I come over here. I pour it out. Ooh, too bad that Leon didn't actually bring it baked, cooked. That would have been a little bit nicer. Leon, I could have had a bite or two. Okay, God, we are so gracious. We have lots of gratitude. Will you please bring blessings into Leon's life? Okay, Leon, be blessed. God has heard your prayers, and he has experienced his gratitude towards you. Lucretia, I see you're here. You've got a lot of joy in your life right now. You want to express that to God. I see. You brought 2012 Syrah. A drink offering, as a matter of fact. 2012, you sure this is your best? The 2010 or the 2008, I think, would have been. Okay, I get it. It's your best. Okay, I got it. Okay. Yeah, student budget, that's okay. Okay, God. Lucretia is incredibly joyful. I really wish you would have brought the 2008, but that's okay. Okay, God has heard your prayers. He appreciates your gifts. Experience joy. And so what we have is we have this system set up. Yes, you can access God, but it requires how many steps? And oh, by the way, the priest, it happens, may be taking a little bit extra because he is human after all. And oh, yeah, Lucretia's not the only one that's a little bit joyful right now. Yes, I am. Thank you for that 2012 right there. And so we have this human interaction involved in this access of God somehow, and there's lots and lots and lots of layers, right? And then once a year, there is a very special priest called the high priest. That's right. And the high priest is one of the several priests who serves over and over and over every day, every minute of every day, every second of every day, doing this sort of thing all the time. And the one high priest is chosen from those many priests, has the opportunity to go in this place called the Holy of Holies, which is right behind this door right here. And so here's what happens in the Holy of Holies. Here we're doing things where we are accessing God in some fashion, through the priest, through God, back through the priest, back to the person. But wow, there's something else. It's not quite this direct, immediate access, is it not? It requires certain things. But the high priest, he can go into the Holy of Holies, and he is the only one allowed to go into the Holy of Holies all year long, because there the full and total presence of God is. And in fact, there's a legend, it's an extra scriptural legend, so it may be true, may not be true, that there was a rope tied around the ankle of the priest that just in case he could not handle the full presence of God, they had a way to sort of pull him out of there and save his life. And so what the high priest would do is he would go in, he would offer the best possible bull, calf, animal, and ask for God's forgiveness, and would express repentance on behalf of the nation, would come back out and give forgiveness to the nation of Israel. So this is what an Old Testament priest does, right? So if you want to access God, you have to actually go someplace. You may not live very close. You have to access God, go someplace, that takes some time. Then you have to bring something that's of your best quality that you can bring. You have to ask somebody else to help you, and they come back and forth, and then there's just layers upon layers upon layers upon layers of ways that we actually access God. So how does this work in our life, right? Those of us who, not all of us in this room follow Jesus, but a number of us do. Well, I don't know. I pray, right? I come to church. I do communion. I do all sorts of good things. I participate in justice. I take care of people who have needs that are greater than mine. I do all these sorts of things. And these are all really, really, really good things and things we ought to be doing, right? But sometimes something can just shift just a little bit in our heart, and they cross over not into things that actually propel us beyond ourselves to God, the things that we just need to do because we need to do. And it's kind of like, oh, here's my 2012. Can you help me out? Can you give me a little bit of relief? You know, or here's my communion. Gosh, can I have a little bit of peace inside, God? Or here's the thing that I do. Yeah, I feel a little bit better about myself because I have helped other people, right? So there's this subtle, nuanced difference between the things that we do that are religious in nature, in fact, important for us to do if we are followers of Jesus, and actually accessing the very person, the creator of heavens and earth, the very person who was there present at the resurrection. There's a difference between accessing that person and doing things and as a means to please that person. Okay, so we're restless people. We need a priest to access this guy. So we're finally at our crux of our passage right here, and I'm going to read it more than once. So in chapter 4, and we know the punchline, right? Jesus is our priest, right? That's how we started. So let me start. Before I read, let me make a couple of comments. There's a really sort of unique way that the author of Hebrews talks about Jesus as priest. But one of the things that happened early in his ministry is some of this, what we saw right here. Jesus would walk around, and if you had a skin problem, you were considered unclean. In fact, in chapter 1 of Mark, Jesus said, you're clean, and oh, by the way, I'm going to heal you. On top of that, go tell the priest. And so you see Jesus walking around in life performing these priestly duties, and you see people having this direct contact with this Jesus, and he is announcing to the world, not only am I prophet, not only am I king, not only am I judge, but I am priest, and I'm going to give you access to God the Father here. And so he pronounces cleanliness before he completes the healing. There's a guy that has 4 friends. He's a paralytic, has 4 friends, and you may remember the story. They go to find Jesus because they want him healed, and they find Jesus. The room is packed, it is jam-packed. There's lines out the door. They can't get in to see Jesus, so they drill a hole in the roof, and they lower him down. And what does Jesus do? He says, your sins are forgiven. He performs this priestly duty, and then he heals them. And you remember the woman caught in adultery, right? Jesus said, yeah, go and sin no more. You are forgiven. And he sent her on her way. He pronounces forgiveness. So we see this activity in Jesus' life. The author of Hebrews comes at it in a little bit more of a doctrinal sort of way that I think is fascinating right here. Therefore, since we have a great high priest who has ascended into heaven, Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold firmly to this faith that we profess. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to feel sympathy for our weaknesses, but we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are, yet he did not sin. Let us then approach God's throne of grace with confidence so that we may receive mercy and find grace for help in our time of need. The first line you see up there. Therefore, since we have a high priest who has ascended into heaven, Jesus, Son of God. We see a picture of the transcendent Jesus who is both priest and God. Now let's unpack this a little bit here. He's not simply a priest. He's not simply the guy coming and dropping grain at the altar. He's not the guy burning up the best, the finest, the highest quality animal here. He's the high priest who has access into the Holy of Holies. But not only that, he's not just a priest, he's a high priest. He's not just a high priest, he is the great high priest. He's not the great high priest, he's the great high priest who has ascended into heaven. He's not the great high priest who has ascended into heaven. He is a great high priest who has ascended into heaven, who is the Son of God. In other words, you have this picture of Jesus, the transcendent and powerful God, saying, I am going to give you access to God. God is giving access to God. Because God is giving access to God, we don't need any of this. We don't need any birds. We don't need any 2012s, and I am putting this down gently here. We don't need any of that. I'm going to open the door wide, and I'm giving you access to the God of heavens and earth, the God who is present at creation, the God who is present at the resurrection. You now have access to Him, and you need none of the rest of this. You need none of the rest of this. Oh, so what does this do? It gives us the possibility. It gives us the possibility we can go directly to God. Now, there is this fascinating line that comes right after this, I think. And here it is. Well, no, it's not. Yeah. Leighton, did I kick that off? I probably kicked it off. Yeah, there. So we're restless people. Jesus, it's the priest, he's the one that gives us access to this God of rest. Let us therefore hold firmly to the faith that we profess. Now this is a very interesting line, is it not? You have this picture of this power and this transcendence. And remember the context, right? You have the people of Israel who were following this powerful God. They had seen God's power, yet they had not entered into the land of rest. You have the Hebrews who were experiencing some tension and some restlessness. They would like to experience this land of rest. But maybe, does this have anything to do with us? I don't know. Maybe it does. Maybe you've moved into town, and the excitement of the new place that you moved into is wearing off, and the reality that you don't know anybody, and you don't really know where anything is, hits. Guess what? We have a high priest who can meet us. And this verse tells us to hold on to that faith that we have professed. Do you have more month at the end of your bank account than bank account at the end of your month, and you're not sure how you're going to make it? You're trying to follow Jesus. What this verse says, the possibility that He can meet us and transform us and meet all of our needs exists, so therefore, hold on. Do you find yourself feeling like you do everything right, but yet you can't ever find that significant other? Gosh, the relationship you were just in just ended. You have this sense, God, I don't get it. Hold on. The God of heaven and earth, our high priest, loves you. Do you feel like you're doing everything right and you can't conceive a child, but yet everybody around you that's doing everything wrong can somehow? The God of heavens and earth wants to meet you and love you. Hold on. Do you find yourself confronted with the reality that the job that you're in, that the major you're in, really isn't who you are? And you're confused because I'm not sure that I understand this God that I thought I understood, because He seems to be pushing me and pointing me in a direction that is ill-suited to who I am. Hold on to this faith. Do you find yourself experiencing significant failure for the first time, or maybe the 100th time? Hold on. God wants to hold you in His hands and transform you and shape you. Do you find yourself wanting to be married for a lifetime, and then the marriage has ended, and you are ashamed and embarrassed? Hold on. God wants to meet you. Maybe you're not sure what you think about this God that we're talking about today. Hold on. Hold on to that which God has given you, and He will reveal Himself to you. So what we have is this powerful, transcendent God who provides the possibility that we have for access to the Creator. And we go on, we read a little bit more. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to empathize with our weaknesses, but we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are, yet He did not sin. Let us then approach God's throne of grace with confidence, so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our need. Here's what I see in this verse. It's not Jesus is transcendent, He's priest and God. It's Jesus is near. He's near. So the possibility that we can access the God of heavens and earth becomes a probability that we will access the God of heavens and earth because he is near to us. And you see this language in here. He's tempted as we are. He can empathize with our weaknesses, yet he did not sin. He is of the highest quality. He is without blemish. He is the sacrifice, the perfect sacrifice. And yet he is near to us as well. He's not just simply this far-off God sort of dialing things in, pulling strings, saying, go here, go there. He comes and he joins us and he meets us in our suffering. So let me tell you about a man that I know to give you a little handle to think about this. I'm trying to summarize as I go here too. So Jesus gives us access to this long-term relationship with a God who meets us and changes us with grace and mercy. Grace and mercy, grace and mercy here. Randy Raysbrook is a friend of mine. He lives in Colorado. We lived in Colorado before we moved here for about 12 years. And Randy was somewhat of a mentor of mine. He's a guy who's been involved in Christian ministry for a good chunk of his life. And I met him when he was in his mid-60s, I think. He became a mentor to me. When he was 42 years old, he burnt out. He was meeting with too many people, telling too many people about Jesus. He was just going through it, right? He was just cranking through the job over and over and over, giving himself away to other people, doing the right things, but not quite experiencing this land of rest that we're talking about tonight. And he had a mental breakdown, an emotional breakdown. And he lost his job because he couldn't work for 2 years. And in fact, as he tells it, he lost control of some of his bodily functions, as a matter of fact, and had to wear a diaper for a period of time. I mean, he's 42 years old wearing a diaper. Oh, my gosh. Just think about that for a man, just the shame that he felt, and he will tell you that he felt it. He met a woman. Her name was Marilyn. Marilyn, in her first marriage, was in a car crash, and she lost her husband and one of her 2 kids. And so Randy and Marilyn were married when this crash happened for Randy. And so guess what? Marilyn understands deep pain. And she nurses Randy back to health. She walks with him over this 2-year period. And so I meet him basically 20, 25 years later in his life. And I can just sense there's something about this man that I don't have that I want to have. Well, at the same time, when I met Randy, Ann and I've spoken about this before, we're in the throes of infertility. We're in 10 years of wanting to have children, and now we have 2 beautiful children. But we didn't at the time. We desperately wanted them. And this restlessness that we've been talking about, boy, it was there, ever present, every day, just this dull ache. In the middle of that, I had become good friends with a guy on staff at the church that we were a part of. And we were a little bit like Randy in the sense that we got busy. We didn't have kids. We got busy with life, right? We wanted to give ourselves away to other people in the church that we were a part of. And so we started a ministry, a young adult, 20-something kind of ministry. We happened to be in the right church, the right location. It sort of took off. We had 150 people running around. And oh, by the way, I'm a math teacher at the local college here. And this is just something I'm trying to do on the side. And I'm just feeling it. This emotional, this burnout is creeping on. So I became friends with a guy on staff. His name was Paul. Paul was really good to me in all of this. He became, I would say, my best friend probably in Colorado Springs. And I don't know about any of the rest of the guys in the room, and maybe some of the women in the room are like this too. I have no idea. I'll tell you how I was. When it comes to friendship, male friendships, I like to do. We do. And then as we do, we talk. And as we talk, then we get to know each other. But I like to do a lot. And so male friendships for me are a slow process. I value them greatly, but it just takes time. And plus, I like to stay busy, right? And so that slows this all down as well. Paul was one of those guys, one of the few, where the gap between what we knew each other closed and closed and closed and closed. And we called each other our 100% brothers because we knew things about each other that we didn't want anybody else to know. We knew, you know, the digitized upload into the cloud. Paul knew 90% of the digitized upload in the cloud, where most people know, I hope, 5% of it, right? So Paul knew that. So there came a day, and I can talk for hours about this, and I won't. There came a day where I showed up to a conversation, and it was clear from the conversation that Paul had betrayed me. I'm speaking very generally right now, and I'm happy to tell you the details offline. And I don't know about you, and if any of you have experienced betrayal, but there's this deep anger. And oh, by the way, the dull lake of infertility is lurking around under the surface as well. There's this deep anger inside of me. There's this desire for revenge. I could just play it over and over and over again in my mind, exactly how the conversation was going to go when he came and confessed and asked my forgiveness. And of course, for the millionth time I played through that conversation in my mind, it never happened, right? I had to come to grips with that. That conversation will never, ever happen. This ministry that we're leading, it became impossible for us to continue because of some of the things that Paul said and did. This is a guy who deeply, deeply wounded me. Anxiety kicked in. The next day, I didn't know if I could get up and go to work. Depression kicked in. It was miserable. So guess what I called? I need to talk to somebody that knows something about what this is like. I called up my friend Randy. He'd been there. He'd done that, and he'd come out the other side. So I called up my friend Randy. I said, Randy, hey, can we meet? And I sat in the Starbucks on North Academy Drive in Colorado Springs, and he told me, he said, Jim, I understand the pain you're in. And you know when people tell you that sometimes, I don't think so. But I knew that he did. And he told me, they said, Jim, if I had a magic wand and I could wave it over you and make the pain go away, he said, I wouldn't. I would not do it. I started weeping. God, I want this pain to go away. Come on, God. I want this to go away. He said, Jim, be willing to linger in the pain, because that is where God will meet you and change you. Now, from almost anybody else, I think I ought to give him the middle finger and moved on, right? Almost anybody else. But this man who I knew had been there, and he had walked through it, and he had come out the other side transformed, spoke this into my life. I said, okay, Randy. Okay, I'll give it a shot. And then as the days played out, and the weeks turned into months, and the months turned into a year or 2 years, I had to sort through a lot of stuff. Some of the crap up in the cloud was reality in my life that had to be dealt with as a consequence of some of all of this. Some of it was just I had to learn how to forgive. And I just did not want to forgive because I was having too much fun replaying this tape in my mind about the conversation that I was going to have with Paul when he was going to confess and ask my forgiveness, and of course it's never happened. And so each time that this comes up, and I tend to go to this place that has almost nothing to do with this presence of God, this land of rest. When I want to go to this place, I would remember this conversation with Randy. And over time, this journey for me became one where I can't say even today, this is 10 years out, we're 11 years out now. Even today, sometimes things will trigger these memories in my mind. I'll go back to these things with Paul, ooh, I'll feel a little twinge. But what has happened over time is because of the journey Randy was on, that helped me and enabled me to say, okay, God, I will come back to this place. I'll be willing to linger in the pain. I will be willing to meet you in this place. And so over many years, that's what God has done. And so I don't have it all figured out by any means, and you ask anybody that knows me, and they'll be pretty quick to say that. But I do know something. I do know that there is this possibility that we can see a peace of God when you're in this place of difficulty. It's almost impossible to see apart from the fact that we are on our knees. We are feeling it. The restlessness is kicking up, and it's spiking in ways that we can't seem to quite handle. That possibility exists. One more illustration to help us think about this, and we'll wrap it up. There's an outfit called Common Wheel, and I ran across a description of what they do. Basically what they do is they deal with cancer survivors. They deal with the soul part of where they're at more than the physical part of where they're at. And here, I'll just read the description. I think it's spot on for us. They put people who have cancer in a room together who have never met. 8 people with cancer who barely know each other's names talk intimately about their losses, surprised to be able to say things they simply never have been able to say before. When someone speaks, everyone present simply listens generously, and no one asks for explanations. No one needs to. So in the end, people find that they are able to belong just exactly as they are. A place that can accept your suffering without dismissing you as a safe place. And being able to talk about this openly, people who are often able to see for the first time that which their suffering has covered over. The courage, the strength, the faith, the will to live and its power. At the beginning, it may seem like a group of victims, but it turns out it is usually a room full of warriors. Then, by some grace, our very wounds can serve to strengthen the life of others. I've watched wounded people strengthen the life in each other over and over and over again. And although I've witnessed this many times, I find something mysterious in such occasions as if something unknown, finding us worthy, has been used just as we are to be an instrument of healing. The crucified, risen Christ meets the victim and calls out strength she did not know that she had. And I see this in the last part of this verse here. Let's go back. Can we go back, Leighton? I want to read the last part of this verse here. The last part of the verse, it's not, I'll just read it to you, it taps into this. Let us therefore approach God's throne of grace with confidence, so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need. Let us then approach again and again God's throne of grace with confidence, so that we may receive mercy and find grace in this time of need. Let us then approach God's throne of grace again and again and again and again with confidence, with open acknowledgement, with unabashedness of who we are. We are weak. We are restless. We are broken. Approach God's throne again and again and again with this in view and in mind, so that we may receive grace and mercy. We have this transcendent God who opens the possibility to enter in and find this person of rest, the very presence of God. We have this near God who meets us and suffers with us, and in that draws out strength that He Himself has placed in us, and we become warriors and strong before this God, this resurrected God, and we follow this resurrected Jesus because we come in our weakness, in our brokenness, and our restlessness. So, here we are. I'm going to go back to the question that we started with here. God meets us and changes us with grace and mercy. Sorry. So here we go. Is there something, someone, some experiences that you don't have access to that you would like to? Jesus would like to give us access to Himself. Is there another slide? So we've got a few questions we'll wrap with. And the first one is this. Yeah, in what ways are you restless? Is there ways that we need strength to hold on? Are there places in our lives where we need grace and mercy? Is there maybe a door Jesus is asking you to walk through? If the worship team would come on up, that would be great. So we want to wrestle with these things, right? So I don't know. There's lots and lots of ways we may need to access God tonight. And so honestly, the most important thing is not so much what I've said at all. It's what you're about to do right now. And so I have 3 options. One is, as we begin to sing and begin to gently worship God, you can just sit there. Just you and God alone. And that would be great. That would be maybe all that you need to do tonight. Some of us are more tactile. We like to feel and touch things. So if you're a tactile person, we invite you up here to the communion table. The bread represents the brokenness of Jesus' body, the crucified God. The blood represents the resurrected Jesus, the blood that was at one time intended to be spilt perhaps on an altar of some kind. This represents the God who gives access to God. And the other thing you might want to do is take this card that you have and place it here in this bowl, just as a symbol of, okay, God, I consecrate this to you. If you're a tactile person, that may help you. And again, these elements are not intended to be priestly things. They're not intended to give us access to God. They're actually intended to point us beyond themselves to the person of God. We want to meet the person of Jesus in this sort of tactile way. And then the third thing that you can do is after we sing a couple of songs, we're going to give you a chance to pray with some people. And they're going to be lined up right over here. Josh will give us some directions in a few minutes about how to interact with those people. And so the idea is when you meet with people and pray with them is they're not priests. They're not going to give you access to God, at least priests in that way. They're going to join with you, and you together will go before the throne of grace and mercy. So, meet God tonight.